Seeds, tiny powerhouse plant embryos that are the starting point of our self-sufficient dreams. These little gems hold the power to create the ultimate veggie garden this spring and summer, or they can crush our hopes of ever having an edible green thumb. No pressure, right? Honestly though, don't stress. There's a significant margin for error when you're starting your own seeds early indoors. Not to mention the seeds themselves are quite inexpensive, so you can always start over. However, let's lean to the positive and take the position that this is going to be our best gardening year yet, because we started our seeds the right way. And to make sure that happens, let me show you everything that you need and need to know to start your own veggie seeds early indoors. So let's get to it. In temperate regions, seeds are started early indoors during the winter to get a jump on the coming growing season. That makes sense, and it's why you start to see the endless supply of veggie starter plants every spring in every garden center and every home improvement store. When do you think they start those plants? Correct, right around now. Most seeds of most of our garden vegetables are started 8 to 10 weeks before our last spring frost. Earlier, I showed you all the things that you need to successfully start your own seeds every year, and I'll link to that in the video description below, but I think it's important to summarize that video before we get started today. Many people suggest many different things to get your own seeds started early indoors, but in truth, you only need 4. To get started, you'll of course need your containers or pots or trays. You're gonna need a proper seeding soil mix. You'll want a way to get proper light to your seedlings once they do germinate and sprout. And of course, you're gonna need the seeds themselves. Now, those are the basics, an items list, if you will, of what's necessary to successfully create your own veggie starter plants indoors. But to ensure our success, let's dive deeper and divide this video up into the 6 specific sections that we need to conquer to become seed starting masters. Initially, we'll talk about the seeds themselves. Let's just get it out of the way first. There's some seeds you direct sow, and there's some seeds that you need to start early indoors. Let's discuss which is which and why. Next, we'll talk about timing. When do we start our seeds? Do all seeds start at the same time? If I'm a week late, am I gonna have no garden? Don't fret, we'll cover it all. After that, we'll go over what makes a seed starting soil. What's the difference between it and regular potting soil, and why do we need it? Then we'll discuss our containers and the transition from plugs to larger pots. Next, we'll look at watering and how we can be making sure that our seeds and our seedlings have access to adequate moisture. Finally, we'll look at planting techniques. How do we actually plant these seeds to maximize not only germination, but also our space and time? It all starts with your seeds. It goes without saying that you want to find a quality seed source. Locally, you should start to see the seeds show up in stores near you just in time to plant. But if you're anxious to get started or your local stores are late, many online sources exist. Conversely, you can also try to save your own seeds from gardens past. Try to do this whenever possible because it's going to result in superior plants. As for what to plant, well, that's where strategy comes in. As we mentioned, we're starting our seeds early indoors to extend the growing season of our warm weather crops to give them enough time to flower, fruit, and produce. So all of your warm weather favorites like tomatoes, peppers, cucumbers, zucchinis, eggplants, etc. are all great candidates. But not all crops are suitable to start indoor early like this, and there's 2 reasons why. One reason is some plants simply don't transplant well. They hate their roots being disturbed, and they don't like being moved early on in their life. Things such as peas, beans, and some melons. They just have a much higher rate of transplant shock, and they're really not suitable for starting early indoors. The second reason that some plants are not suitable for this is that they're sown in such large amounts that hand planting them is just logistically impossible. Things like carrots and beets. These guys are just not something that you can start early indoors and then expect to plant outside individually later on. Careful planting and strategy will ensure that you're starting the seeds early that need to be started early. Timing is everything. And with starting seeds indoors with the specific intent to plant them outdoors at a specific time, it really is important. The ideal window of time of when to start planting your seeds indoors is 8 to 10 weeks before the last frost date in the spring. This is designed so that the plants are established and developed enough to be planted in your garden outdoors. Start your plants too late, and you're defeating the purpose of getting a head start. Start them too early, and you could be left with overgrown, lush, indoor-dependent specimens that are difficult to transplant outside. Sprouting and growing your plants indoors may start with your seeds, but it could end if you pick the wrong soil. What you grow in is the foundation for a successful seed starting project. Yes, seeds sprout in almost anything. Heck, you can sprout the seeds in paper towel. But if we're looking to maximize our germination rate and subsequent early growth success, then we have to pick the right medium. Seed starting soil differs slightly from potting soil, but it differs greatly from the soil that's out in your garden. It should be light, airy, free of debris, pH neutral, and hold moisture quite well. You'll find for these reasons, most commercial seed starting mixes are a blend of peat, compost, and perlite. You can buy your own. They're readily available almost year-round, but you can also make it. I make my own using a combination of around 40% compost and 60% coconut fiber. I'll screen that mix out to remove any large debris, and I'll refrain from using any amendments at this time. Germinating seeds don't really need fertilization, as most seeds contain all they need to grow for the early part of their life. Once we have our seeds and our soil picked out, and we've determined that it's the right window of time to plant, we can now focus on our containers. What I have in front of me is the overwhelming choice for most growers to start their seeds in. It's known as a plug or seedling tray. You can use little cups, small pots, really anything that can hold soil and drain water, but the plug trays show that you mean business and that you're serious about indoor seed starting. The ones I use are a 10-20 dimension and fit nicely inside a holding tray, which will come in handy later in the next section. I often get asked why I don't just seed directly into larger pots, and there's a few reasons why. One is space. A 72 or 98 cell plug tray is the same size as 18 4-inch pots. That's 5 to 6 times as many seedlings in the same amount of space. And think of the soil saved. At least 70 to 80% savings in seed starting mix, which, in all honesty, is quite likely the most expensive type of soil that you can buy. And the benefit of being able to start so many seeds, even if you only need a few, is that you get to cherry pick the best ones. If you need 10 cucumbers and you plant 12 in larger pots, but 4 aren't so good, you could be left with subpar plants to start your garden. Seeds are cheap, and while they're not free, certainly cheaper than having to start all over again. Like the plants they eventually become, seeds need water. They need water to germinate through a process known as imbibition. It is the uptake of water that actually causes the seed coat to burst and allows germination to begin in the first place. Watering seeds can be tricky, and you have to be careful with the amount that you water. Too much water, and you run the risk of the environment becoming anaerobic and toxic to the seeds, but too little water, and it won't be moist enough for germination to occur at all. Using those trays that we mentioned before, seeds and their containers are best watered from below. This will prevent the seeds from being washed away from vigorous top watering, while providing a nice even distribution of moisture. 2 liters seems to water the 10-20 cell trays perfectly. And if you're using the clear dome covers, they'll not need to be watered again until well after they've sprouted. Finally, we have planting. Planting your seeds is actually quite easy. The instructions are given on the back of almost every seed packet. My preference is to fill up my plug trays first, compress the soil down about 25%, and then top it off. I'll water the tray from below and then let it sit for a couple of hours to really soak in. For planting, you can either make a little hole in those cells and then place the seed inside, or you can place the seed right on top of the soil and then push it down the recommended depth. Really easy stuff. Certain plants like tomatoes and peppers can be taken a step further in that they can be multi-seeded. What that entails is actually putting multiple seeds per cell, upwards of 7 or more seeds for some indeterminate tomato varieties. Then, when the plants are at the stage to move on to larger pots, they can be separated and grown individually. It goes without saying that the space and cost savings are unreal. But it can't be done with all plants, and if you're at this level of planting, then quite likely you're creating starter plants for sale, or you're already a commercial operation. To maximize your germination success, most of our seeds are going to require supplemental heat. The ideal temperature range for seed sprouting is between 80 and 90 degrees Fahrenheit. This is usually accomplished with a low wattage heat mat designed for seedlings. Most of your seeds will begin to sprout within a week, especially at the warmer range of temperatures. It's at this point that those plants are gonna need light. A sunny window, a solarium, or if you're lucky, a greenhouse. If that's not an option, you'll have to use artificial lights. LED grow lights are the best, but they're also the most expensive. The key here to remember is that you need to provide enough light at the right spectrum. If your plants are growing long and leggy and spindly, they're telling you that they simply don't have enough light. Definitely correct this, as it's gonna be a long 2 months until they can be planted outside. Starting seeds early indoors is a privilege that allows us temperate gardeners to grow crops we otherwise couldn't. It's a great way to break up the often overwhelming responsibility of spring that we all face. And really, it's just nice to be able to cultivate and grow at a time of year when we're all itching to get started. Hey, if you have any other seed starting tips that you'd like to share with the community, leave it in the comments down below. Also, if any of you are on Facebook, head on over and join our gardening group called Growing Better. The group has grown phenomenally fast, yet it will never lose its sense of community or its welcoming feel. If you're passionate about growing epic organic fruits, herbs, and veggies for you and your family, the Growing Better group is a great place to hang out, share, learn, and grow. Hey, thanks for watching, guys. If you're getting value in this and the other series that I'm doing on YouTube, hit those like, share, and subscribe buttons if you'd be so kind, and I'll see you in the next video.